Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third in our series of roundtable events about LED technology and the client experience. We're excited about today's topic, LED and content, why having a plan matters. Before we start, I want to cover a few basics for our call today. We welcome your questions and we'll address them as we go through the roundtable. Please post those in the Q&A section of the Zoom window. That will enable the guests to see the questions and assist in replying to them during the call. As we start, please comment in the chat section of the Zoom and tell us where you're joining us from and say hi. For me, hello, I'm in Houston, Texas today. I'm Fred Cain. I am the Industry Development Director for Absen. My focus is in the consultant community. I'm running these seminars, these roundtables, as an opportunity for us to expose our customers to more of the detail of the LED industry, the back end, for example. I want to take the chance to introduce our guests. Actually, I'll let them introduce themselves today. Let's start with Christian.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. So I really appreciate to join the Roundtable webinar again. So another one and exciting for the new topic. And what I do within Absen is I'm the Industry Development Director for Rental and Staging, or at the same time, and that's the more interesting point for today, I'm Industry Product Director. And that means I'm familiar with all the products. You usually get described by our CTO as I'm the interface between the market and the customers and the technical departments like R&D department, like product line and so on within headquarters. So I try to forward the demands of the market to headquarters and also investigate with them together to make compromises once needed, that it's going into the right direction. So that's, and I joined Absen since 3 years and former been working for almost 20 years in the rental and staging industry.
Great, terrific, Christian. Glad to have you on the call. Steve, let's move to you.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you, Fred. Thanks for letting me be a part of this today. I'm the CEO of 900 Pounds. We're out of Dallas, Texas. We're a future-focused experience design agency, and we utilize emerging technologies to create wow experiences and practical applications. So that's in the form of just physical experiences to virtual and augmented experiences to just a full gamut of interactives. So I couldn't be more proud of the team. It's been about 10 years now, all kinds of clients and very industry agnostic and tool agnostic. So it's a great time to be a digital nerd in our space. So thank you for your time today. I'm excited to be a part of the talk.
Excellent, thanks, Steve. I have avoided the term digital nerd my entire career, but I think I'm going to get stuck with it now.
You've earned that title, man.
All right, and Nick, let's turn to you.
Thanks, Fred. Hey, I'm Nick Spencer. I'm a product specialist for Green Hippo, and we're a media server manufacturer. So we handle media playback on large scale for live events and installations, integrations, houses of worship, and pretty much anything you can dream up.
Terrific. So let's dive in. We're going to talk a little bit today about hardware, content, distribution, planning, those types of things. So I'm going to start with the hardware side. Christian, again, thanks for being on the roundtable with us. It's always got such great information. As you said, you seem to have some of the inside data from the factory, which is always good to get. So how does the type of content that a customer wants to display affect the selection of LED product? Does it make a difference?
Yeah, so let's say it should make a difference. So well, if I start from hardware perspective, so first of all, yeah, it's about screen resolution, and screen resolution means the resolution that should be displayed by the PC or a computer and media player and what else. and the content according should be within the same resolution. So that is where we should start to consider about hardware as well. And that means if we need to stick on a certain size of a screen, then it results automatically in a specific pixel pitch if we want to keep the resolution. And those 3 points, so resolution, screen size, and pixel pitch, are totally depending of each other. And then we come to a technical point where, we speak about an LED screen in that case. And that means about LED and color reproduction. So I think LED is really a high level of color reproduction already, sorry. And that means that definitely, so the colors needed for HD standard can be easily achieved. And but where we need to deeper consider about is if there is a strong requirement of, let's say, the trend, at least the trend within the home used HDR. So a lot of people would like to see HDR on the screen, but it already starts on the content side to really produce HDR, and it's on our side as LED manufacturer that we, as I said, deeply need to consider how to reproduce and which LEDs need to be selected to have the biggest color gamut, so the color triangle, which can reproduce HDR, because not all the LEDs can do, and this also as a hint, by fact, none of the LEDs can 100% reproduce HDR colors. So the LED industry is close by, but 100% can't be achieved. And to get the closest to the target, that need the consideration. So that's from my side, technical aspect of LED.
So I think what I heard you say is that as the content gets more defined in terms of wider color gamut and HDR type applications, that's when it makes a difference what product we recommend.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, the other things that we always talk about when we talk about LEDs, when we're quoting walls or we're assisting specifiers and identifying the requirements, is power and heat load. We always talk about that. How does content impact power and heat load?
I think that's quite easy from physical law perspective, physical rules. So I think everyone can imagine that if you show majority white on your LED screen, then you do have the highest power consumption you can get. And at the same time, it's also the highest heat load as a result, showing a lot of white. And that is, let's say, quite often the case if we speak about PowerPoint presentations on an LED screen. Then for longer time, a white background might stick on a wall, and that means high power consumption, and again the heat as a consequence. So therefore, let's say it would make sense if you turn around the idea. So why not to use black background and then just light up the important information? But what I see is that really the industry and a lot of companies are not used to do that. So they still have in mind, we need to light up the room with the content as well, with a projector, with an LCD. So I think we need to guide people that the opposite might be better. So and there we come for sure to the black and white, which is in that case the black and white of power consumption and heat load as well. So the lowest power consumption and lowest heat you can get by black, and then you have the range of colors being used where there is the difference also for power consumption finally. And last but not least, please let me mention the brightness. So sometimes people also don't consider that brightness might not be needed so high if using black background or high contrast pictures than if you would use white.
Right. Okay. Terrific. So, it makes a lot of sense that, the color of the content is the power consumption and heat load, obviously, and the brightness. We hear all the time that customers are not using their LED walls at full brightness because it's just too much intensity of the light. So if a client doesn't know what their content's going to look like, they haven't hired Steve yet, let's say, and they don't know what they're going to do. Does that concern you as you help them select hardware?
So let's say it doesn't really concern, because within our product portfolio, we have quite universal products. But what is the market usually looking for? So it's still to get a cost-effective and high quality for reasonable price. And then you should consider about the content as well. So to make a quick example where I'm usually faced to is, or what I usually ask customers at first place for is what I mentioned already in between. Are they showing mainly video on the screen, or do they show PowerPoint presentations day by day? And that might already make difference, and also difference in the product and selection. So it's really that you can go down the road and you can have a product saving energy if you really specifically go for the target, and the target is the content shown later on. So our LED screen would be nothing without the content accordingly. And so you can save money, you can also save energy, and that's all related to each other.
So let me stop for just a second and ask our moderator Jason to launch our first poll question today. We've got a few poll questions that will act as we go along. So here's our first question. Go ahead and give us a response there, if you would, in the audience. We're curious to see what you think. Was content planning something that you did? I am surprised to see that we're getting some content. Who needs content? That's a dark screen without content. So I do want to say one thing to tie on to what Christian was just talking about with power consumption and heat load and things, and sustainability. Absen has launched the Absen Green project, which is our sustainability program. LED is not really a sustainable technology, but we can make it as sustainable as possible by working very closely on power load, heat consumption, things like that. And our new products, as they're being developed, that is at the top of the list of our new technological advancements, is lower power consumption, lower heat load. So I'm going to end the poll here. It looks like yes, we talked about it was one, the most, but surprisingly, second place is we didn't talk about it. We just expected marketing to take care of it, which is kind of what I feared. So now let's turn to Steve. You've got such a great story to tell about your. I met you recently at the Cavlo show in Dallas, where we first had a chance to meet, and we were on a panel there as well. And you've got such an exciting business. I don't know where to start with questioning you, but maybe I'll just start where we start. Where do you start? Where do you start when you're working with a new client?
Well, Fred, I think, this survey speaks for itself, right? I mean, a lot of times they're either going to leave it to marketing, or maybe they've thought about it, but even then the client really doesn't understand all the possibilities. And so starting with a discovery, really thinking through the art of the possible, and just helping them understand, the options, and whether it's storytelling or whether it's a type of animation or we're piping in video or streaming, does the space need to be interactive? So, just getting into SME interviews, working with, the AV contractor, the architect, the GC, I mean, everybody involved, to try to understand what those business objectives are, right? And how do we build a creative story around that? There's a lot to dig into. There's the back end. Sometimes the client doesn't even realize that we can integrate a really great back end CMS that is a video player that's really easy to, update content on, and just scale that content multi-phase over time. So it starts with discovery, and then we get into plan, and plan is really where we get into that technical roadmap, right? What are those requirements from a who knows, maybe there's content that the client has that we can leverage. Maybe there's assets we can leverage. We look at their brand, their colors, their guidelines, all those good things. Again, going on site, understanding the space, how can that content impact the users and the audience and just the space overall? So it's exciting, but that's how we usually start discovery.
Right, that makes sense. You've got to figure out where they are in their headspace about what they want to accomplish.
Yeah.
That leads me to the question about the clients themselves. I mean, do most of your clients understand the power that content can have on the viewer, or are they completely surprised, that there's such a wide variety of tools available to them?
A lot of times they have kind of tunnel vision, right? They have this space, they have these screens and these beautiful LEDs, and a lot of times they're thinking hardware first. They just want to get something on there. And what we try to help them understand is, let's not look at 7 minutes of content that's looping on there, right? And it's just going to be really beautiful footage, but how do we make that an experience? And so, a lot of times the client doesn't understand that they can have a modular use in the space, right? Maybe they can come in and have events or meetings, get the, if it's in a lobby, I mean, day to day, that space, that lobby is going to change. What is it like at 8 a.m. when it's got more foot traffic in it? You might want to pipe in some news and weather, right? And things like that. Different, I don't know, you could say maybe during the middle of the day, around lunch, you want to have beautiful ambient content. Maybe it's footage, it's drone footage shot. And then maybe there's an interactive component in the evening or something. So a lot of times they just have kind of a narrow focus. They just want to get something on there and they don't understand the possibilities. So, I mean, the old quote, right? It's not what you tell them, it's not what you show them, it's how you make them feel. So that's what we try to do. Let's give them some goosebumps. Let's push that screen. And I mean, you don't buy a Ferrari to drive it 60 miles an hour down the tollway, right? I talked about that last time we got together, Fred. You want to push that thing, and they don't understand how far you can push that screen.
Yeah, that's kind of why I don't own a Ferrari.
Me neither.
Well, the price tag, of course, but I don't. I owned a little race car at one point in my life, and it was sold off quickly.
You're just cruising now, Fred. You're just cruising.
There you go. So before I ask the next question, Jason is going to be posting the LinkedIn links for our guests today. And for myself. So anyone who doesn't have me connected, please go ahead and connect with me. Steve and Nick and Christian are also going to have their links posted, so you'll be able to contact them if you have any questions moving forward. So Steve, it doesn't sound like any of your projects are the same as any other project. I mean, is there a typical type of project? And if so, what does that look like?
There's usually connective tissue between projects. Maybe that's some sort of animation, 2D motion graphics, or something that ties it in together. Maybe it's user interface graphics. But you're right. I mean, we focus on the wow experience, which could be a physical space. It could be immersive and interactive. Maybe it's a customer experience center or an executive briefing center, a conference, a trade show. But maybe it's a practical application. It's a virtual onboarding tool or an AR tool that can help drive sales in a really unique way and reach customers in a really unique way. or maybe it's just beautiful visual content. But either way, it's really trying to dig into the goals. And sometimes our clients will know a technology they want to hone in on. Sometimes, again, it's a physical space with a beautiful set of Absen LEDs and a beautiful video wall. And maybe that's our blank white canvas. Who knows the possibilities? Let's be artists and let's paint big, bold, beautiful colors. But maybe it's a practical application that really needs to drive sales. So, it starts with that discovery. We have a 6-phase process at 900 pounds, but yeah, there's not really a typical project. I mean, we've got a pretty diverse range of capabilities, about 9 across the board. So that keeps all of us creatives hungry. And when every month and every week is different, that can be really fun.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it's nice to have different focuses from time to time. One of the things that I experience in my work with consultants and architects is that the LED wall is the most expensive thing on the spreadsheet. And, it always causes the people in the C-suite, our executives to have their eyes pop out of their heads a little bit when they see the number. And so without a clear content strategy, it's difficult for us to justify that. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to do a content-based roundtable, because I think it's so extremely important to the success of this project. Jason, I'm going to ask you to launch the second poll question, if you would. And while that's up on screen, then we'll take a chance to continue on with some questions for Steve. So what stakeholders did you involve in your content creation strategy? If you can click all that apply, that'd be great. So Steve, tell us a little bit about, some industries. Don't name any names because we don't want to call anybody out here, but what do failures look like in your industry? I mean, what's the bad stuff?
I mean, in our industry, being trailblazers and being on the front lines, sometimes when it comes to innovation, really pushing the needle with innovative tools, or trying to take their tech stack and how do we make spaghetti and turn that into lasagna, right? A clean project, clean tech stack, utilizing old legacy tools that they have. There's a lot of failures. A lot of times the failures are going to happen during the creative process. And as long as we can look out for some of those, we can help the client understand what could happen. Working with these tools, that's always good. And we've learned a lot by falling on our heads a few times over the years and usually able to get back up quickly. I remember one project that was a fail that we had was in the Northeast, and it was an immersive holodeck. And it was projection on all 4 walls, all 3 walls, 3.5 walls actually. And you've got this immersive content. We created it flat, and we thought these 2D graphics were going to look really cool with this parallax effect and everything. And the client didn't have budget to go super high-end 3D. So we get into the space, we're testing, and thank goodness we still had a couple of weeks more to get into interactive development and get into testing and QA, because it's one thing to see that content flat, but when it was wrapped around the space, it didn't work. And we needed to look at that content in VR to understand that it was going to change once it was wrapped on those corners, right? So we need to look at it from a POV in the space. And so now we do that on every single project to test and learn and make sure that we don't run into that problem again. But, I think we've all seen epic failures where something like, I don't know, maybe subtitles are in Spanish, but you're in Brazil where they speak Portuguese, I mean, like, let's open our minds here. Let's get stuff right and let's double check. And, there's a lot of industry fails, many.
Yeah, I think that, from the perspective of a lobby digital sign, for me, the big failure point is when it's just the logo of the company, or maybe it's welcome Jim, or whatever. I really think that that's pretty stale. But that may be what you get when you got the marketing department too. So, who were the stakeholders that you involved? Our poll basically The lowest number was the C-suite, which again surprises me. If it's the AVIT team and market stakeholders, of course, facilities is about half, but the C-suite is only running about 25% or so. So that kind of surprises me. Okay, so Steve, Christian and I talked a little bit about color and power and heat load, that type of thing. How do colors impact you? I mean, what are the human factors in what you do? How do you take that into consideration?
Well, I mean, human factors, I mean, when it comes to color science and helping someone understand, like something like heat or warning or anything like that, you're going to use red, right? And big, bold colors. So I think utilizing color in a space really, really is going to make an impact, but it may not be the only way to make an impact, right? Think about patterns, right? Maybe we can break up visual content or animation into patterns that are really going to grab people's attention or draw them over to some area. Let's say a space like DFW Airport really wants to get people over to this side of the terminal. So they might use some sort of elements in their branding to help draw the attention that direction, just to get users and the audience to go that direction and buy more concessions. So I think there's a real science to understanding the space and color and how that can, just color anyway is a mood thing too. I mean, my wife always laughs at me because, again, my team and I, we're a bunch of nerds and we love, orange, just the energy that color emanates and stands for, it gets me pumped. So, but you and I talked about this last time we got together, Fred, and that not only color, but just user experience, right? And thinking about accessibility and inclusivity in design. Do you have people with disabilities in the space? Do you want things a little bit lower and that color maybe to be bold on the bottom there? So it's a good balance for everyone involved and all users. So really trying to identify the users in the space, and maybe using text instead of colors. That could be an easy solution to something.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up in our last panel, you brought up color blindness, which is something I've never thought of before in content strategy. That's a unique situation. In my family, I have a brother who's totally colorblind, and I have another one who's only partially. So they both see colors differently. It was always fun when I was a kid growing up, and they'd come to me I'm not colorblind at all, and they'd hold up a pair of socks and a pair of pants and say, "Do these match?" And I would always say, "Yes, of course they're perfect together." But they couldn't prove me wrong, so I had the advantage there. I was also the youngest, so I was able to tease.
We've seen your socks, Fred, and how stylish you are. We know you're not colorblind.
Yeah, exactly. I got a mouse issue here. Bear with me 1 second. It's funny, the things about color, as you mentioned, the red for, heat or stop, or green for go,
Mm-hmm.
They're so universal. So now we understand a little bit about hardware, and Steve, great descriptions of the way you do your business. I think it's just so exciting to see that human element and that creativity. So Nick, let's turn to you. So now we have a great LED wall by Absen. We have this terrific custom content that Steve and his team have developed. What happens next? I mean, Steve hands you a file and says, "Put it on the screen." What are the first steps that you take to assist a customer?
Yeah, I think what it usually starts with is taking a look at all of the assets that someone like Steve sends as a whole, right? Get the big picture, both from Steve and from the client. Make sure there's no disconnect, kind of be that final stop in back checking everything, the creative process. Not that Steve's done a bad job, not that planning has done a bad job, but just make sure that everyone's on the same page again. Looking at the resolutions of the files, what screens are in play, where we can play certain elements, and kind of just getting that goal again from the client, right? What are they trying to portray? What story are they trying to tell? And what tools did Steve deliver to us to help tell that story? And kind of going from there, I think, is really the ground zero of trying to get something from concept to actually displaying in front of an audience.
Yeah, you mentioned this, that having those stakeholders together is important. Having Steve involved, have the owner involved, make sure that all of those workflows are in the same sort of linear path, which is terrific. When you're dealing with hardware selection, I mean, having those stakeholders has got to be pretty important, not only to get a strategy or to get, as you said, an overall picture, but how does that help you pick the hardware?
Yeah, I mean, it all again goes back to what is the story we're trying to tell, and what are the tools delivered. Like Steve mentioned, there's so many different kinds of assets, whether it's just a pre-baked pretty background, or if it's an interactive experience. Usually those are executable files, or is it a bunch of different files that you're compositing and need to be adjustable day to day to accommodate maybe new visitors to a space or something like that. So that all plays a part into what hardware we're going to choose, whether it's just a static image player or a high-end media server that can do interactivity and user inputs and things like that. So I think it is really important to get everyone to sit down together again, like I said, to kind of go over the goals and make sure that the hardware and software that you choose to deliver the assets to the display kind of can all provide what you want, and also to consider what may come in the future, right? Because we all know that projects evolve over time. Just because you install something 1 year doesn't mean it should only have the capability to do 1 year's worth of features or something like that. You never know what's going to come down the road. We can't all be future proof, of course, but I like to think that having everyone together as well can help think of where this can go, not just where we're trying to get to tomorrow, but a year's time from now, what do we want it to look like and continue to do.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually, Steve. I'm sure you see that a lot in your business. That I mean, customers have to be coming back to you over and over again, saying they want to update, they want to change, they want to add, they want to adapt.
Absolutely. Well, you saw that poll earlier where C-level executives aren't really involved sometimes in the content. Then they come in the space and they're like, whoa, wait a minute. So I think we've all seen that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the guys paying the bills want to know what they're paying for, and they want to see what the return on investment is, how it's measured.
Absolutely.
So, you mentioned it, Nick. What are the different file types? What are the different file sizes, resolutions, things like that? Tell us about your products, and I know media player. That's what I know. You stick it behind the wall, you turn it on, and then it works. What else you got?
Yeah, I mean, so that's at the very basic level of kind of what we do. What we specialize in at Green Hippo is flexibility. What we're known for is live events, and so in live events, we're changing day to day. It's not like an installation where you put it in and it more or less does the same job for the next 5-10 years. These products need to be flexible for anything from like the Super Bowl to award TV shows like the Oscars, but then to also go into spaces to provide high level video playback. So we need the reliability, the flexibility, different controls in and out. We're not here to replace Crestron, but we're here to also interact with them and kind of bring a little bit of smartness to it, not just playback certain files. I think one of the biggest things that gets overlooked is the compositing aspect of things, right? It doesn't all need to be baked out into a single piece of content. You can hand us a pile of files and we can have a nice background, but also incorporate a logo top left one day and a different logo bottom right the next day, scrolling text and things like that. So that's kind of what we specialize in, is just higher level media playback across a wide variety of displays, whether it's a combination of flat screen, TVs, direct view LED, projectors, kind of combining that all into one creative canvas.
Yeah, you just explained exactly why you and Steve and the other stakeholders need to be in the room at the same time, right? I mean,
Right.
If you don't know that that's the logo in different places, that's pretty basic. But if you don't know that's something that needs to happen in the content development, then that's something you've got to plan for.
Right.
Let's talk about managing content for a minute. I mean, you and Steve have both mentioned the idea that content doesn't have to be a loop. It doesn't have to be the same thing for 7 minutes, I think Steve said. So, how do you manage content with your hardware? I mean, what tools do you have?
Yeah, with our hardware specifically, I mean, we work all internal, so it's just network based. Any servers on the network that can see each other, they can each manage each other's content. So usually you kind of have one master and you distribute content from there. How you get content into that master is kind of up to you. You can do it on site, locally. You can do it somewhere within the building just by also being connected in the network, or you could do something like a web CMS and have content going into a Dropbox or something like that to replace existing files or add new files, those sorts of things. And it's like that with just about every media player out there. I think everyone's kind of got some level of, whether it's local content management, but mostly everyone has some form of network content management, because I'm sure we can all appreciate that you don't want to have to pay a guy to go to site just to stick a thumb drive in a thing for 5 minutes and then leave for the day. And no one likes incurring that extra cost.
Right. You lead to my next question, which is how easy is that to do? I mean, let's go back to our first poll question about the marketing department being involved, right? So, is that something that a marketing coordinator can run out there and do?
Yeah, for sure.
Complicated? Oh.
Yeah, all they need to do is just have a file structure or like a naming structure. And usually, again, we walk through that with the client. I'm sure Steve does as well, so that if assets get handed off to a client, you say, okay, here's how we are naming things. Could you please follow this? And then all they have to do is drop it into a folder. And in about 5-10 minutes, however long it takes for the content to come in, network speeds and all that other technical stuff, then their content is playing on their displays. So it's really easy.
So it automatically gets into the loop or whatever the case is.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're replacing a clip, you can just drop it in. It'll override what's currently playing if it is active. And if not, the next time it does come up, it'll be your new piece of content, or the same with an addition. The next time it gets there, it'll be your new clip. And you can know that it's good and exactly what you want it to be.
Right. Terrific. That sounds super easy. Sounds like the hardest part in this process is you, Steve, getting all the creative juices going.
I can be a little difficult. Our team can be a little. No.
I don't know that it's Steve. It's the everyone coming together to agree on a common goal, right? That's the hardest part of it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah,
that is true.
So Nick, what are the gotchas? I mean, what are the things customers don't think about that end up biting them in the backside at the end?
Honestly, what we're here talking about today, content. It's always the last thing to be thought about, right? We've been so good over the years about right gear, following technology, making sure that we're capable to do what we want, but no one ever stops to think, what is it that we want to do, right? We know we want to put something there, but what is that? I think that's the biggest gotcha, and kind of also why, like I say, we're all here today, because it tends to be an afterthought, which is a bit of a shame, because everyone spends all this time, all this money, all this effort. But then, like you say, if you walk into a building and all it is the logo, that's a bit of a letdown, in my opinion. So that's what I think the biggest gotcha is.
Yeah, I'm actually waiting for real-time 3D LED to be put into a lobby displays. Yeah, I want to walk into a lobby and have a dragon jump out at me and scare me, something like that. That would be fun to see.
Yeah.
So I think that let's talk about technology. I mean, that's something that it affects all of us in different ways. I mean, it's been changing even more rapidly with COVID, it seems. Maybe all of the engineers are locked in the same room, and they're trying to get the new innovations out. So is there a particular, I'll ask each of you, is there a particular improvement in technology that made a big impact on what you do? And Christian, let's start with you.
Yeah, so the industry moved forward for sure, and as you mentioned, somehow specifically during COVID times. So there is also a bit more time than usual to deeply consider and to develop, where usually you get pushed by the market in a high speed. I can make it quite easy from perspective of our company Absen. So look out for our clear cobalt. It's our new and latest product we've shown on our Infocom, and there we kind of combine all what we've spoken about also today. So we can do HDR. We have a big color triangle with that product. We have quite deep black, a deeper black than with usual LED. Let's call it that way. What do I mean? So we have micro LED, COB, and flip chip in there. So you see, I'm a very technical guy, and these are the three technical keywords, and all these are in, and these result in deep black, higher brightness, even with lower power consumption, and then kind of protection of the surface so that you can't peel off the LEDs anymore. So even with people very close to the screen. So look out for that, and that is, let's say, just the beginning. It will continue with smaller pixel pitch in that range, and also technology from that perspective will get more and more mature and coming to a more reasonable price. And finally, I really expect, or we expect, getting a kind of standard.
Yeah, I'll say I was at Infocom, and that CL series was phenomenal looking. We even had product developers from our competitors coming over and asking if they could look at it. And the off-axis viewing of that was tremendous as well. We did win the Systems Contractor News Best in Show for Infocom for that product as well. So
Nice.
Head over to our website if you want to check that product out, usabsen.com. So www.usabsen.com. So Nick, I'll ask you next as a hardware guy. What technology is changing for you?
Camera tracking has really changed a lot in the last 2 years. Ever since COVID, it seems like it just got on a rocket ship and went through out of orbit, because it used to be really unobtainable. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but it was very big budget, right? So not everyone could get into it. And nowadays, I mean, a couple $1,000 and you can have yourself your own camera tracking and do really, really complex things for not as much budget. So it's changed a lot of the way that we have to think about things specifically. But it's also been really cool to see what people can do with it, whether it's just in their home or for a project specifically, because it's become really accessible. That and the 3D tools that are constantly evolving. So things looking more lifelike, being easier to render in real time. It's all come a long way really quickly.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I mean, I remember back in the day, right, with video conferencing where they would have the camera track the microphone, much like we have in our today on our Zoom call. The speaker is on the screen, and the camera would constantly zoom back and forth, and if you were on the other end, you get dizzy.
Right.
That's a whole lot better now.
Yeah, exactly.
So Steve, let's turn to you. You're not really in the technology business, but boy, it sure does affect what you do. Tell me about how technology affects your work.
Well, I tell you, Nick and Christian really, lots to be excited about, right, in any of our industries. But I think I'll go on a different area of focus for a second on just like 5G, right? Just web streaming services, the ability to offer, local installations to a wider base, through the web, utilizing streaming through WebGL, easier portability, no loss in graphic fidelity. I mean, I think that is really going to be key as far as navigating from mobile to different machines in a space. So, I mean, like I said earlier, we utilize and work with projection, LEDs, VR tools, obviously web, virtual AR, etc. So I think just trying to tie all those things together and not losing any graphic fidelity is key for us. So I think 5G is going to change the game for all of us. It sometimes is a buzzword at this point, but I'm just eager to see how it gives us opportunities to reach customers in unique ways and tie technology together.
Yeah, I've got a customer who's really highly focused on the smart building environment. And, it's funny, the last time I was there, he was telling me about how they were tracking people in the office, and there's all these IoT sensors and everything all over the place. And I think for me, that's an exciting technology to see how that affects what we do, particularly in the COVID times. I mean, and post-COVID times, if there is really going to be one. But for the opportunity of knowing where people are, having, cleaning workstations as people come in and out from their hybrid work environments, things like that. And I also think that the monitoring capabilities of the IoT devices is something that is really exciting, because, I mean, we're being asked by our clients to provide capabilities of reporting down to fan speeds, down to pixel burnouts, module issues. They want reporting for that, for their monitoring and their real-time uptime capabilities for their customers. So that's a pretty exciting technology from my perspective.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask a question or two from the audience. Let's start off with, there's one, Steve. It's System Integrator asking the question, how do they bring up what you do as they're talking to a customer about an LED wall project?
Well, I think it kind of, comes from what Nick said earlier too, and that, it just seems like it's an afterthought a lot of times. The client's going to see this big number there on the proposals and estimates, and like, have you thought out, content? Have you thought out how it needs to scale and be updated over time? As seasons change throughout the year, or the business evolves, or the brand changes. So I think it's just, a lot of times it's an afterthought. It definitely can be costly. So helping the clients understand, if you're going to go into any sort of animation, if it's 3D, there's a whole bunch of different ways to create compelling 3D, but some of it can be extremely costly. But so can really high-end video production and things like that. So really just helping the client understand, you got to think through this in the beginning, and it can scale. It can be multi-phase. You can do things quarterly. So I think just helping them understand how important it is key.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, Nick, same question for you. I mean, you mentioned it as you were talking earlier about how, you want to be able to evolve the system from day one to day 1,000. What are the questions that a system integrator should be asking about your product, about media players and distribution?
What are the questions they should be asking? Is probably just capabilities. Not just will it do my project today, but what other things do I anticipate to be added, right? A lot of times I find that it's not just a blind relationship between the client and the consultant, right? There's history there usually. So there should be some level of expectation of what may come in the future, right? And just kind of thinking those out, of like, okay, well, we know we may not add screens, but they're really into like IoT or something like that. So there may be some level of interactivity with that, whether that's people tracking or something like that. So just asking kind of the future questions, because it's really easy for us to spec what gets handed on a piece of paper. What's hard is to give you something that is going to be upscalable for the future. And I'd be the last person. I would hate to sell a system and then hear from someone a year later saying, I want to add in this feature, but in order to do that, we have to sell you another, big line item box to do that. That would just be a bummer, instead of just taking that out day one.
Right. Yeah, I think, when I was in the integration business and when I was in the consulting business as well, one of the things I would always tell my clients is that 30% of what you're going to use this system to do in 3 years, you don't know yet.
Right.
And so because you're gonna come up with new, you and Steve both mentioned it, you're going to come up with new ideas as you go through the process of experiencing the system, and it's going to spark new ideas. How can I do this? How can I do that? What about this? And so that 30% is unknown from day one.
Yeah, exactly.
So Christian, question for you about the micro LED. Micro seems to mean smaller. So what's happening with pixel pitches in the micro LED?
Yeah, so micro LED means indeed that the pixel pitch is going down, but again, being the technical guy, micro LED is more the definition of the size of the LED or of this red, green, blue ingredients, and this by fact then goes down for the pixel pitch as well. So we actually speak for the CL series, as mentioned. We start with a 1.2, 0.9, and 0.7 will come up as well. And yeah, I think we will still go down with the pitch, having higher resolution on smaller screens, but yeah, I think it will be still a kind of exclusive applications where such very small pixel pitch is needed. So with a 1.2 and definitely with 0.9, we are already we can cover the majority of applications. As then from yeah, selecting products perspective. It's also about viewing distance and screen size and being able or human ability to see differences. So there is limitation as well. So 0.7 is reasonable for then the next step of applications, but smaller, for me personally, is hard to imagine. Right. Where it would make sense.
Well, how many system integrators out there are being told by their customers that they need 4K displays, but they don't have 4K content, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing. I want to be smaller pitch, but you don't need it. Steve, this is a question that I know you're not going to be able to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Price, what does it cost? What does it cost to get you to do what you do? I know you can't answer that as a cookie cutter, but how can a system integrator relay that information to a client? It's for 10 grand, you get X, for 20 grand, you get Y. I mean, how does that work for you?
Yeah, we really try to understand as much as we can in discovery, try to understand the tools that we need to work with. But I mean, yeah, there's, like I said earlier too, when it comes to animation and things, there's a cost-effective way to do it. And then there's really, really expensive ways to do it. But it really just depends on the project. It's the full gamut. We work on things that are $30,000 and things that are 7 figures. So it runs the full gamut and just kind of depends on the objectives. But again, things can scale over time too. Sometimes we implement a crawl, walk, run mentality where let's just get you to first base, get something there and build a plan to continue to scale from there. That way it can work with a client's budget. They don't have to come out of the gates just firing on all cylinders. But there's a way to do things intentional and build a plan that works for all key stakeholders involved. And at the end of the day, you've got a team here, right? You've got the systems integrator, you got the AV team, you got the technology itself, you've got a lot of people involved. So we can build a plan where everybody wins. And again, maybe it can scale.
So I think maybe the point that we'll make, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, I think the point that we're trying to make is that systems integrators should not be afraid of the content discussion. Mm-hmm. They have the tools, they have the partners, they have the media servers, the players, they have Green Hippo. You have Steve at 900 pounds in his organization. You've got Christian and myself from the display side who can help make product selection as well. So don't be afraid of the content discussion, folks. It may be very complicated, but it can start very easy. And it's something that you should definitely be starting. This has been terrific information, guys. I really appreciate your time today. Audience, I'm thankful for your participation. Like I said, we posted the LinkedIn links for our guests, so please reach out to them. Before we sign off, I want to just do a quick around the table and just say final thought. Christian?
Yeah, so even that I'm from LED display side, I would summarize it as content is king. I think that is still the most valid sentence out in the market, and it's really a pity that not that much really think about content from beginning till the end. And now short sentence for LED perspective. So why not to use the advantage of the LED technology, which is high contrast, so deep black and high brightness. So I usually make a sentence which I shouldn't do because I've also been working in projection. But ask the projection guy what is his black, and that means it's his white screen. That is his black. But within LED, it's really black, and play with that advantage. So that's my final thought about.
Yeah, 9 years at a projector manufacturer, I had that same problem. Nick, let's turn to you. A final thought?
Yeah, I also just want to echo what Christian said. Content is king. It doesn't go anywhere without good content, and thinking about it before will pay dividends for the rest of the project. And it's also, it's not hard to reach out to someone. Just because you don't know the answers doesn't mean someone very close to you doesn't. The guys at Absen, myself, Green Hippo, and Steve, we all know people. So whether or not we do it directly, I'm sure someone would always be willing to extend a hand and reach out to someone who does. And that's all it really takes to get started, right? And you may not know much, but just starting the conversation early can really pay dividends.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. We all learn from someone, right? You don't learn by osmosis. Steve, your final thoughts?
Well, I think it's an exciting time as things continue to evolve, and like we talked about today, there's just a whole lot of directions to go in, a whole lot of tools to leverage, and it just takes communication, to your point, and maybe there's a missing thing that could tie everyone's challenges together when it comes to content. And maybe that's more like an industry playbook, maybe like a really cool white paper is an old way to describe it, but maybe there's a place that we can point people to that could become an industry standard as far as what the options could be, and helping people understand, like, hey, read this, I don't know, super detailed blog post, but make it simple where everybody can understand it. There could be something there, but I think it's a challenge we all hear a lot. And at the end of the day, the hardware is going to not look quite as impactful and beautiful if the content is crap.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to go ahead and sign off here. I want to just make sure everyone's aware you can reach me at fred.cain@usabsen.com. And then, of course, the LinkedIn connections for every one of our guests. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and we will see you on our next roundtable. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
You too.